Outer Orange.
Set 4 is dropping in a couple days, and I wanted to talk about a deck that didn't get a chance to really go in depth. Today, we're going to talk about deck KRYSRAIN because she's getting quite a bit of new support, and I kind of wanted to give you guys sort of what this deck is capable of, because I do think it's actually a relatively strong deck. So here is my KRYSRAIN deck. This is with set 4 in mind, and also with the lyrical set in mind, because those are basically the two new things that kind of buffed up this deck, I would say. Basically, her Divine Skill lets you bounce your entire board back to your hand. It's mandatory. You can't really, like, pick, you know, certain cards to bounce back. You have to bounce back everything. Basically, you can call a unit, and then that unit gets the same power as KRYSRAIN, along with the same crits. This deck, in my opinion, was a little lackluster before. I think this deck got a lot better. I also think the ride line made this deck more consistent. Rather, the other ride line is kind of more high roll. I think this ride line is just a lot smoother. In general, this ride line just made all the mermaid decks better. This includes Prism and Kyrie, which is the other two mermaid decks you can play. This ride line is restricted to mermaid cards. When rolled upon, it has to be a mermaid card to get the full effect. KRYSRAIN got a new card. It's a restander. Basically, when your grade 3 or greater Vanguard with KRYSRAIN's name attacks, you can entry blast 3, put this into soul draw card, and you basically pick a rear guard that's bestowed by a card's ability this turn, and you choose that rear guard that got chosen by Kyrie and you by KRYSRAIN, and you stand it. If you pick KRYSRAIN, if you use KRYSRAIN's ability and you choose a unit, give 15k, whatever that unit is will basically be restanding. And that's really powerful because ideally you're going to pick up Francette as your target, because Francette on swing can bounce a card back to its hand, restand it, do it again. So realistically speaking, what's happening here is you're bouncing 2 cards back to your hand. 5k will stack twice, and you do get to bounce 2 cards as long as you have the condition met, which you should have the condition met on both restands, on both attacks of hers. The first attack, you'll basically probably bounce back the card that this card is boosting. And then on second attack, you'll bounce back the card that this card is being boosted by. So you'll basically get your 2 bounces back. And then if Yuka is behind KRYSRAIN, then at the end of that battle, you can pick the Francette and bounce it back. So basically speaking, you get to bounce back 3 cards to hand without even divine skilling, which is really important because the only thing I'll usually be left on the board is actually just Yuka, which is very, very good. This will disappear and go into Soul, so which is also really good. So you're just leaving 1 card on the board, which is very impactful if you think about some decks like to retire or Doji likes to target your rearguard circles. They only really have access to Yuka, and that's basically it. So it's a really good combination of just you being able to bounce back your board without having to instantly go into Divine Skill, and it's really, really nice. I think this deck got more consistent in every single way. Like I said, the Mermaid Ride line lets you find your Inez. It can also find your energy, it can find your Francette, it can find Persona, which is very important. This deck without Persona feels really, really rough. You can run Mousy now to protect yourself. You don't need this card as a shield card, but it's not bad to have because ideally the cards you want in your hand at all times is basically Inez, Francette, Persona, Yuka, and the grade 1 that has the guard restrict on it. And you want to keep bouncing those cards back to your hand, so you don't want to guard with those cards. To avoid guarding with those cards, you use this card instead, basically, to kind of help with that going on grade 3 and on, so that way you can save some of your better pieces for your more aggressive turns. Another thing is you can just go ahead and just clear out your whole board, bounce it back to hand, and then go into Inez, and then use Inez's effect to basically call another card. I will say this effect isn't that crazy because she can't call herself and she can't call KRYSRAIN from how I'm reading it, but her numbers get really big. And she also just becomes a very beefy on her own, and her copying KRYSRAIN's effects, if you just happen to, you know, check a lot of triggers or whatever on the swing, then this gets very, very large, and then that's basically it. This deck, I think, got actually easier to play now than before, because before you used to have more one-ofs. I think now it's a little bit more streamlined. You'll notice the triggers are all different. It's just one of the situations where in case you have to call out a trigger or something happens where you have to call a trigger for the condition for your whole board to be different card names. That's what these triggers are for, to kind of help out. You don't necessarily need to do this. It just kind of helps in case you have a situation where your board state isn't ideal. Then you can kind of run the triggers to kind of help them out. Since they're all different card names, they'll still meet the condition of KRYSRAIN. Keep in mind, you can bounce back those triggers and perfect guards back to your hand. So even if you have a crappy board, you at least get it back to your hand, and then you can wait a turn and then go into a more crazier turn later on. Basically, that's honestly kind of the deck. Do like seeing this card. I feel like if you see this card every single turn, you're winning, basically, because this card is very rough around the edges to play around. There is one issue. You do have to be careful with your energy blast. You don't always want to play this every single time you place it on the rearguard circle. You may sometimes just want to not activate this ability, and ideally you'll usually have some kind of board to work with. Like I said, the mermaid cards will find you your package. They'll find enough of your pieces to where you should be fine in order to keep playing the game, right? So you should be okay. And then you also have the energy cycler to kind of help you keep going as well. So you kind of have everything you need. You could realistically run the other cycler, the Valshbond, over this card if you wish to. I think that's also fine if you are very careful. If you want to have more energy, you can do that instead. You will eat your soul a bit more, and with Yuika in the deck, your soul will kind of deplete faster. But you do have a way to replenish it with the new Restander. She goes into soul and draws you a card, right? So you can kind of play that route as well. I will say you'll run out of soul pretty quickly because the Ryland also eats soul. So if you want to go down the Velshbond route to kind of save a little bit of energy, you can, because I will say, surprisingly enough, even though you do get 3 energy, you eat it really quickly. You could run the Sea Song Dragon also in the slot if you do want a little bit of that energy safety, if you want to just have that as well. You don't really discard in this deck though, so that card kind of doesn't come up enough unless you're playing the order package, which I don't think is that ideal in this deck anymore. You can also cut the mouse and also, you know, run more of the guard restrict. It's kind of up to you. I will say the shield is necessary. It's not necessarily always needed, but you do need it. Sometimes you just don't draw into triggers. This deck doesn't draw that much. It draws, but it's not like a crazy draw engine like some other decks. Like some other decks in this field, like I think KRYSRAIN draw a little bit more. But you do get the draw off of this and the draw off of this. So you do have ways to draw, but it's not like immaculate, right? So you do want to be a little careful with your shield, because a lot of the cards in your hand are the same cards that you've been playing over and over again, turn after turn. Overall, I think this deck's actually pretty good. I don't know where to rank it yet. I don't, exactly know where it stands, but I do think it's a deck to consider. I do think it's a deck we'll probably see in set 4, like here and there. I do think it's a consistent version of some other decks that are kind of in the meta right now in Lyrical, so that's kind of where I stand with this. Also, just quickly, over trigger, I think you can run any OT. Realistically, the blue one is probably the best one if you want to hit it on Divine, and I think that will be an interesting choice to make when you get to that point in the game, if you hit it in like weird synergies when you're trying to play into more of this style, or if you're trying to play more for Divine skill. That depends on what's going on, right, from situation to situation. You can also run the red one, and that one is also pretty good, I think. I gotta remember the exact ruling on it, but I'm pretty sure even if this was restood by one of these, I think if you actually check the red OT, you could still restand her again. I'm not 100% sure on that. I had really question. I would have to read the card exactly word for word, but I think you can do that. You can also run purple. I think purple is also fine just for the healing and getting to recall a card, especially if you bounce your whole board and call something off of. Actually, no, it won't work that way. So if you hit purple, it actually won't work because the person would just bounce it back. So maybe purple is not ideal. So blue is definitely not bad. Yellow might not be too bad too if you're trying to kind of clear and draw a ton of cards. I don't think yellow is too terrible, but yeah, I think it's definitely between yellow and blue and red depending on ruling. I drew in Caliburn. I just think Caliburn's really insane. The soul and counter charge does matter. It does come up. It's pretty important. So realistically speaking, I think this is just a really, really good Regulus piece in most of Lyrical decks. Not every Lyrical deck, but I think most Lyrical decks want to play this. Ever since I put this card in, every deck has felt just so much smoother in almost every single way. Whether you're drawing or you're counter charging, whatever it is you're doing, it's useful. So there's that. On that, guys, I think that's it that I have for this one. Overall, a pretty good deck. I like it more now than I did before. I like the fact that it feels more of a complete engine now. It kind of felt a little bit more janky before. I'm not really into janky decks unless they have like a really good like payoff. And before, this deck definitely felt janky and the payoff didn't feel good. The payoff was like, oh, I get the guard restrict, but it's like, okay, like if my opponent reads the card, they kind of play around and then I die. You realistically have like one turn after Divine, and then you die because you'll get your board back, you'll live that turn, and then you'll die the next turn, basically. So that's kind of how this deck felt. Now it feels way more consistent, feels way more stable. Everything about it just feels better. So I've actually been enjoying playing this now. So I thought I'd tell you guys about it too, because it is a set 4 deck that basically is dropping soon, and it is legal for the upcoming BCSs. So it may be a deck that might be coming around the corner nearby. But that's it for this video. It's a pretty short one, nothing too crazy here. Just kind of want to break down this deck, as this is definitely a deck that will probably be seeing pop up. Maybe not so much once set 5 comes out, but it will probably be popping up here and there going into set 4 to set 5. I don't think this is necessarily a contender, but I don't think it's a terrible choice either if you want to just play something consistent all day. I don't think it's a top 8 deck, but I think it can get you pretty far. It's basically how I view this deck. And I will say, like, if you hit the nut, you hit the nut. Like that's just kind of how the deck is. I think it's definitely an option. And if you really like KRYSRAIN, I think this build is very good. So yeah, you try it out. Tell me below what you think about it. Other than that, guys, 50cards.shop. If you need your goodies, if you're missing your restanders, you can get them at 50cards.shop right now using code ORANGE to save yourself some money and get the card that you need to play in any future events, whether it's Lyrical Cups, Locals, or BCSs, whatever it is. And if this video was informative to you, please feel free to subscribe. It does help me push the channel. I am trying to get to 5K. I'm also just in general trying to push the channel. I feel like I want to create good content for y'all, and as long as you guys keep subscribing, I can keep creating more and better content, and it's free to subscribe. So yeah, other than that, guys, peace out. Das vidanya. I'll see you guys in a future video. Bye! That's nice.